As I say, almost every time I stand behind the sacred desk to say a word, recognizing that I don't do that by myself. I acknowledge the memory presence of my ancestors, those of African, European, and also First Nation Native Americans. These relatives of mine whose faith and indomitable spirit I've inherited and whose lands we now occupy. It is the tradition of my Native American sisters and brothers and family to ask for permission to speak. Natakwiyasi, Ashe. May we always remember and never forget. While I'm at it, I have to acknowledge the memory presence of my paternal granddaddy, the Bishop William Earl Selders Sr., and my maternal grandmother, Mother Annie Easter Selders, the preacher and the musician whose blood runs warm in my veins and whose spirit overshadowed me even before I got here. And to the Reverend Gerald Devon Ford, my dad who raised me, whose memory will never grow dim in my mind and heart. May I always make you proud. It's preaching time now. And I have a word. Let me pray my prayer. Would you all pray with me just one minute? Give me A flat, please. I need thee, oh, I need thee every hour. Some 85 years ago, Daddy and Mama King birthed a baby boy. And they received that boy into a family of preachers. Both on Mama King's side and Daddy King's side is this history of preachers. Martin King Jr. was a son of a preacher and a grandson of a preacher. Happened to be my story too. Amen. But not only was he birthed into a family, a biological family, but he was birthed into the human family. He was birthed into the world. And every year since President Ronald Reagan signed into law in 1983, and then the first observance that occurred in 1986, we as a nation paused to reflect on the life, work, ministry, and legacy of this great American hero. Now, when we talk about this holiday that was sought and fought for, led by his widow, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, she wrote in her own right. Now, officially, we observe in all 50 states and our United States territories. Now, that didn't happen until about 2000. Reverend Mack said New Hampshire was one state, the other holdout was Arizona. Go figure. The Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, who has connections here in Hartford at Hartford Seminary, in his controversial book, I May Not Get There With You, said that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is arguably the greatest American ever produced on our native soil. Figures like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington and Thomas O. Tom Jefferson seized the national imagination while holding from political office. In contrast, King helped to redefine our nation's destiny as a private citizen in a remarkable career that lasted only 13 years. I reminded my congregational yesterday, as I remind students of mine, that really the civil rights movement was a youth movement. But you see, Martin King, when he mounted the pulpit at Dexter Avenue Church, was 26 years old. Y'all would look at a 26-year-old kind of funny leading a national movement today. I asked my young people, would you be willing to stand tall to speak your truth to thousands, maybe millions, maybe the world at 26, 27, 28, 29 years old? In my opinion, the 26-year-olds got a long way to go these days before they could say a word like that. But I digress. Dyson went on to say, as a religious leader, an activist, a prophet, a social prophet, King challenged our nation's moral memory. He bid America to make good on promises of justice and freedom for all persons, promises that had been extended almost 2 centuries before. I'm coming back there. I'm coming back to that moment. We come and gather in settings like these to remember and to reflect. This African-American educated son of the South Baptist preacher whose words and ideas challenged and redefined this nation and left an indelible imprint on the global scene, we come to reflect, to take stock of our own selves in light of his life, and to inspire one another to our own work today. Continuing in the path, the journey toward justice, freedom, and equality. Now, I appreciate very much Dr. Sproul, for you helped set up everybody that spoke, helped preach a little bit of my message. She helped set up for me the context for which I believe social justice, and as we talk about it, comes from. I had to do a little legwork because I wanted to know what, as a teacher myself, I wanted to know what is social justice. This phrase was coined by a Roman Catholic Italian Jesuit by the name of Luigi Tapparelli in the mid-19th century, about the 1840s, 1845. And it now has come to mean this idea of fair and proper administrations of laws and of social norms, conforming to the natural and God-given law that all persons, irrespective of ethnicity, origin, gender, possession, race, religion, you name it, are able to be treated equally and without prejudice. It refers to this, as Dr. Sproul said, this ability that a person or a people have to realize their potential in a society where they live. Yes, those inalienable rights that this nation's founding documents lifted up. Dr. Matthew Robinson defines social justice as promoting a just society by changing and challenging injustice and valuing diversity. It exists, he means by social justice, it exists when all people share a common humanity and therefore have a right to equitable treatment, support for their human rights, and the fair allocation of community resources. In conditions of social justice, Dr. Robinson went on to say, people are not to be discriminated against, nor their welfare or well-being constrained or prejudiced on the basis of their gender, their sexuality, religion, political affiliation, age, race, belief, disability, location, social class, social or economic circumstance, or any other characteristics that their background or group membership may hold true. Social justice. In other words, it is being in pursuit of what Dr. King called this very practical and attainable objective. He called it the beloved community. At the Victory Gathering following the Supreme Court decision desegregating the seats on the Montgomery buses, said the end of nonviolent protest is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit, this type of love that can transform oppressors into friends. It is this kind of love that will bring about miracles in the hearts of men and women. Resounding the prophet Isaiah's image that was read a long time ago. This image where the wolf romping around with the lamb and the leopard sleeping in tranquility next to the young goat. I wonder sometimes, however, have we grown cold? Have we grown tired and our passion chilled with pessimism as our voices have stilled and our collective actions have lessened, while the hurting, the marginalized, the disenfranchised, the alienated, the hungry, the naked, the imprisoned, the sick, the lonely, the desperate go on in a struggle without our voices leading in solidarity and advocacy? I wonder. Dr. King said, the church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state. It must be the guide and the critic of the state, never its tool. I've been asked several times to run for political office, and I grin and I say thank you, but no thank you. And I respond after that with two things. One, I promised Pamela that I wouldn't run for no political office. That was a deal breaker for us to get married. I would stop riding a motorcycle and I would not run for political office. But the second thing is that as a preacher, I feel my responsibility is to speak to power. Not necessarily participate in the dealings of power. In Dr. King's most famous speech, y'all know that speech, which is, I have a dream today. He said this: there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to disintegrate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. In my opinion today's reality is a long way from the prophet Isaiah or from the prophet Martin King. Their vision of peace, justice, and healing. We read and hear the text that was read before us from the prophet Isaiah, and yet in our context, we got a great many things going on. Thank you for asking the question, what's going on? Let me tell you. Conflicts and struggles flaring up and threatening to flare up all over the world. Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Egypt is on the rise in civil disobedience, and all over Africa there's the ruminations of war and rumors of war. And of course, Palestine, Israel ain't never settled down. We get one peace treaty written and signed, only to be looking for another one in a few minutes. That's an amen moment right there. But that's not limited to this. We are in our own cities and neighborhoods across this country, and even in your town and my town. Our homes and our workplaces, our relationships with others, perhaps even within the walls of many of our congregations. Can I say this and y'all won't shout me down? All is not well. There is the specter of danger and trouble that fuels the fear that so permeates and propels so much of what's going on today. So what is it? Our time, our response. We've got to come to understand that the absence of peace, in other words, have other ways too. In the threat of terrorism that makes even peaceful days feel ominous and secure places feel unsafe. What is it that you can't drive downtown into Hartford because you fear being hit in the head? Y'all looking at me funny, but that's the story that I hear from people who live in the suburb. It's dangerous in Hartford. Or as I go down to teach at Yale Divinity School, the community says to themselves, well, you better be careful now outside of the campus. Our time. We are in danger. Some may feel of the growing anger of the dispossessed that threaten to explode, teeter-tottering on the brink of anarchy at any moment. That's why you got some who, they got whole TV shows now about how, what's going to happen at the end and how we stockpiling our resources just in case y'all go crazy in the city. Or what kind of world are we going to leave our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren because of the way we have misused it vis-a-vis our thinking or non-thinking of the environment, the waste, the resources that we use up? There are many who echo Fannie Lou Hamer's often quoted expression. Some of us be tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Our time, our response. And yet we come doing our part to these kinds of spaces to meet the challenges of today's physical force, the wrongs that exist today with our offerings to develop the soul force needed to meet and overcome and right the wrongs of our times. Efforts like those of the Connecticut Interfaith Fellowship for Universal Healthcare, or our very own beloved Christian Activities Council, whose leading has helped in the passage of Sustanet, a complete system of healthcare reform that was proposed by the state legislator, that was proposed to the state legislator by the Universal Healthcare Foundation of Connecticut, and now got passed. And now the Christian Activities Council and others are leading the effort, assisting Connecticut residents in their participation in what is now called Access Healthcare. Access Connecticut. What is it? Access Health Connecticut. We ain't got no problem with Obamacare here. But that's coming because some church folk got up in the mix of it. Some religious people said, no, we're going to do this and do this correctly. I know we're a small little state, but we're a state that was able to put our chest out and say, while they got down websites all over the country in D.C., we got up websites and we got people mobilizing. We got people who are being signed up for health care. I got to toot my own horn. All my beloved Zezel House, Reverend Paul Ritter and Reverend Steinle held together a small band of church people for 10 years plus in order for a couple of buildings over there on Homestead to get built. And there we have now for the last 13 years served and given housing and services for people who are disabled, families. I'm tooting my own horn. There's some of us that get it and have been in the margins. Some of you have been out there working for justice in your own area. Yet, our response still, see, I think there are great strides that we have made. I can't say we ain't doing nothing. Right. However, this nation continues to have needs that kind of boggles my mind. Listen to this. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. Dr. King said that 40 years ago. He warned, the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, but we must speak. We must use our voices, we must muster the soul force to not shrink back from the vigilance that it takes to call on every citizen to get involved in some way to recover the good in our public educational systems, for example. Especially in our urban centers across this state, cities like Bridgeport, New Haven, and here in Hartford, as well as across the country, in fact. Good folk struggle on all levels to find a way forward to deliver good, adequate public education to our children in safe and quality environments. Our time, our struggle. Michelle Alexander, in her book, The New Jim Crow, she aptly describes the ugly and painful reality that most of us see but don't see. The reality she describes is seen when we come across any group of black and brown high school graduates and observe the difference between the racial difference between males and females. We observe it when we see a college class that has 25 black students and there are only 5 black men. We stumble across it as we witness police officers routinely pat down our black brothers and brown brothers, then drive them away in police cars and paddy wagons to imprison them on charges 13 times higher than white men, sustaining a racially criminalized injustice system that we must not continue to let be unaddressed. It must stop here and now. A few weeks ago, while we were getting ready for Christmas, we just finished carving turkey. Our government down in Washington, D.C., that's the way my grandmother would say, Washington, D.C., cuts were made to SNAP. SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program. Some of y'all know them as food stamps. Cuts were made that will impact nearly 47 million Americans in the coming year. They need our voice and advocacy. Our time, our response. How might our church how might our coming together in spaces and places like this, how might our gathering in faith communities turn into beloved community growing, reaching inward in our soul force development to outwardly manifestations of action and movement and efforts that change the realities of today. I don't want to be a part of a number of religious folk who seem to be hooked on the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. I'm tired of that. That's a quote from Dr. King in his letter from a Birmingham jail. I want to be a part of those witnesses of faith that help bring about a society where everyone has enough to eat, where everyone gets an adequate education, everybody that wants to work gets a job earning a living wage, everybody that has access to health care. I want to be a part of a religious group and a people of faith who advocate for every elderly person. When they come to the end of their days, they do it in dignity and security. Every person is judged, this is Dr. King again, not by the quality, I want them to be judged by the quality and the content of their character, not the part of the stuff I see, where we say skin color, sexual orientation, gender, or other sexual biases. I want to be a part of a religious tradition and a witnesses of faith where every single person, every single God-gifted person can experience the expression of love and respect and regard for just being just who they are. Reverend Dave McAllister says this, a magnificent creation of the divine. Our time, our response. My colleague and friend, in ministry, the Reverend Dr. Aubrey Hendricks, prayed this prayer at the close of his sermon. If you all would allow me to pray this prayer in your hearing at the close of this message. He said, guide me and guide us all to struggle to change this world into God's kingdom of justice. So that on that great getting up morning, all of God's children will look around and see that every stronghold and every principality and every unjust structure and every evil power that has stood against God's love and God's liberation will be brought low and made plain. So that one day every woman and every man and every girl and every boy can laugh at the chains that once bound